Europe. Holland. Amsterdam. 15 kilometers from the city center, Schiphol, one of the world's busiest airports. More than 600 aircraft take off or land here every day. Sunday, October 4th, 1992, 2:40 p.m. An aircraft enthusiast takes this footage of an Israeli El Al 747 cargo plane arriving from New York. The jumbo will load up and refuel before flying to Tel Aviv in Israel as flight El Al 1862. 3 p.m. Loading begins, supervised by Jerry Plettenberg, El Al's operations officer. Today's cargo includes consumer products, but some boxes are labeled dangerous goods. Jerry has a good idea what's inside. On El Al cargo flights, he's seen a huge range of military hardware.
Apache helicopters, radar equipment, aircraft wings, missiles, jet engines for F-16 and F-15s.
All these weapons supply the Israeli military, which is locked in a 45-year-old conflict with Palestinian military. .62's takeoff will be supervised by air traffic controller Henriette van Openen.
It was wonderful flying weather. You could see to the end of the world.
All the flight paths in and out of Schiphol pass over densely populated areas of Amsterdam. Under one of them lies the Belmer suburb, 13 kilometers to the east. At its heart, the sprawling Groeneveen apartment block. It's home to almost 2,000 people. Among them, Marlene Treidemann, a nurse, and Guillermo, her son.
Every day planes would come over. You got used to that after a while.
Guillermo will celebrate his 17th birthday in 5 days' time. He's a typical teenager, into pop music and martial arts movies. But today, he's been to church with his mother. The Treudemann's home is on the 5th floor of the Groeneveen block. Marlene and her husband Stanley are originally from Suriname, a former Dutch colony in South America. Graciela, their 14-year-old daughter, is a popular girl who's doing well at school.
Always laughing, always happy. A positive word for everyone.
6 p.m. On runway 1 at Schiphol, Captain Fuchs powers up the 747's 4 Pratt & Whitney engines.
LL 1862, ready for taxi.
He hands over to his young co-pilot, Arnon Ohad, to give him more flying experience on the 747. 6 minutes after takeoff, El Al 1862 heads east over Amsterdam's suburbs.
300.
6:27 p.m. and 30 seconds. The engines are still at full thrust as the Jumbo climbs to 6,500 feet. Everything is running like clockwork. The crew settles in for the flight to Tel Aviv. In less than 5 hours, they'll be back on home soil with their families. Suddenly, a terrifying jolt rocks the plane. It starts to lose altitude and rolls violently to the right. Veteran pilot Captain Fuchs grabs the controls. He battles to stabilize the Jumbo. If he fails, the aircraft will spiral out of control.
LL 1862, Mayday, Mayday, we have an emergency.
After 30 seconds, Captain Fuchs manages to wrestle the Jumbo back to steady flight. Flight engineer Sophia desperately scans his control panels to try to find out what's wrong. Seconds later, another crisis. The instruments reveal that both engines on the right wing are out of action. It's a pilot's nightmare. Captain Fuchs must get back to Schiphol for an emergency landing. Fast. He tells co-pilot Ohad he needs the airport's longest runway.
We request 27 for landing.
Air traffic control clears the Jumbo for the journey back to Schiphol.
That gave heading 360, 360 the heading.
Roger.
The return route to runway 27 will take the Jumbo over the Belma suburb where the Treidemann family lives. They and thousands of others in the crippled jet's flight path are completely unaware of the drama unfolding above them. LL-1862, a fully loaded 747 cargo plane, is badly damaged and rapidly losing height.
LL 1862, Mayday, Mayday, we have an emergency.
6:30 p.m. The roll, but it's getting worse. And now the Jumbo is losing height fast. It's just seconds from the Belma suburb. Here, unaware of the looming danger, Marlena and Stanley near their friend's apartment. Teenagers Guillermo and Graciela relax at home. 4 floors up, at the other end of the Groeneveen block, 31-year-old Andre Boss hears the approaching rumble of jet engines.
You can describe the noise as getting louder all the time, and eventually it starts to roar.
Suddenly, the roll accelerates to an extreme 90-degree angle, and the jumbo spirals towards the Belma.
Raise the flat. Get your gear down.
Going down. Going down.
Tank rate. Pull up.
The roar of the jet is now deafening. Andre grabs the phone to call the emergency services. Seconds later, a nightmare unfolds just meters from his home.
I looked at the landing gear as it flew straight past my balcony.
Marlena and Stanley reach their friend's apartment. In his 10th floor apartment, 36-year-old bank worker Rinus de Haan is about to eat dinner. A screech from his pet cat brings him to his balcony. He's paralyzed by what he sees. The jumbo is heading straight for his apartment block.
I saw my life go by in a flash from my childhood to that moment. I thought, it's over.
"6:35 p.m. and 42 seconds. El Al 1862 smashes into the 6th floor of the 11-story apartment block.
I heard a huge noise. It was as if a door slammed closed, like a bang.
The impact knocks Rinus unconscious. Burning aviation fuel rains down onto dozens of apartments. The sound of the crash came from the direction of Marlena and Stanley's home, where they left their children just minutes ago. The couple race back, gripped by fear. What terrible disaster has struck their neighborhood? And are Guillermo and Graciela in danger? El Al 1862, a 747 freighter laden with cargo, smashes into the 6th floor of an apartment block in Amsterdam. "6:35 p.m. and 47 seconds. Air traffic controller Henk ter Brakke realizes the signal from the jumbo has stopped. Up in the control tower, Henriette van Openen can see why. A column of flame and smoke reveals the jumbo has crashed. Marlena and Stanley Treudemann race for home. Suddenly, through the trees, they see a towering wall of flame.
Stan said to me, "Marlena, it's our flat." I said, "No, that's impossible." He said, "Marlena, our children, our children." He was screaming.
Stanley freezes. But Marlena runs to the burning apartment block. She finds a staircase and races to the 5th floor.
I was only thinking, I need
There's no way out. Not even his cat can jump from the 10th floor.
I thought, this is the end. I thought if I come out, it'll be a miracle.
Andre Boss's apartment, 200 meters away, escaped the impact. Now he rushes to the crash site to see if he can help.
What you see is the enormous heart of the fire. You see flames come out of every house.
Andre knows there could be hundreds trapped or injured, and many could die before firefighters arrive. With no thought for his own safety, he smashes open doors which are jammed or locked. Entering some apartments would be suicide. There are too many flames. But in others, he rescues people who've been overcome by smoke. Stunned local people rush to the scene. Marlene Treudemann desperately questions everyone near the crash site. Have they seen her two children, Guillermo and Graciela? Still trapped in his 10th floor apartment, Rinus de Haan feels the temperature soaring as the blaze rages outside.
At that moment, it was 58 degrees Celsius already in my house. I was sweating pints.
Rinus fears he's got just minutes to live. But he can do nothing except pray that he and his cat will be rescued. Just when he thinks he's about to pass out, neighbors break in. They rush him from the inferno in the nick of time. "6:40 p.m. Less than 5 minutes after the crash, the first of 16 fire engines from across Amsterdam arrives at the scene. Brave local people like Andre Boss have already pulled many survivors from the crash zone. Now firefighters take over the rescue operation and tackle the inferno. News crews capture the scene as paramedics start to treat the injured. "50 minutes after the crash, Marlene still searches for her children. But no one has seen them. The terrible truth starts to sink in. She said goodbye to Guillermo and Graciela less than an hour ago and promised to be back soon. Now, all hope of seeing them alive again is fading.
At that moment, I felt as if I was dead myself. I felt as if I had died inside. Why did this have to happen? Why did my children have to go?
News of the disaster spreads around the world.
As many as 200 may be dead tonight after the worst air disaster ever in the Netherlands.
Dawn reveals a gaping hole in the building. The crash destroys 31 apartments on 11 floors. The official death toll is 43, including Captain Fuchs and his crew. The Netherlands Aviation Safety Board quickly mobilizes 8 investigators. Frans Earhart is a senior member of the team. He's a former fighter pilot with 20 years' experience as an air accident investigator. But now, he's facing his worst nightmare.
You hope it'll never happen, but then it does happen. A large plane in the middle of a residential area with many victims.
What triggered Holland's worst air disaster? And why did the 747 fly steadily for 8 minutes after the Mayday, only to nosedive without warning into a crowded apartment block? Now, by rewinding the events of that fateful day, and by going deep into the investigation, we can reveal what really happened to LL-1862. Advanced computer simulation will take us where no camera can go, into the heart of the disaster zone.
In that case, heading 360, 360 the heading.
Earhart checks recordings from air traffic control at Schiphol. They reveal that co-pilot O'Hard reported losing power in both engines on the right wing.
Number 3 and number 4 engine inoperative.
Investigators know that 2 engines failing at the same time is almost unheard of. The team begins to suspect a more sinister reason for the loss of the Israeli jet.
We thought from the beginning LL was possibly targeted by terrorists.
The investigators fear that Flight 1862 was downed by a terrorist bomb or even a ground-to-air missile. And they have a second mystery to solve. If the Jumbo was hit by a missile, why did it stay airborne for a full 8 minutes
Sink rate, full up.
before dropping out of the sky?
Sink rate, full up.
To see if the terrorism theory stands up, investigators need to find the Jumbo's engines and its black boxes, which record technical flight data and cockpit conversations. But it's a daunting task. Even if they survived the crash and the 1100 degrees Celsius inferno, they now lie buried under a mountain of rubble.
The plane had been broken into so many pieces during the crash that we didn't know where to start.
Early the next morning, search teams start to sift through the mountain of wreckage. Investigators know they may face a long wait for clues. Then, an unexpected development. An off-duty policeman reveals that he saw Flight 1862 as it climbed through Amsterdam's airspace. What he tells the investigators gives them an electrifying new lead. Investigators have no concrete leads to explain why LL-1862 crashed into an apartment block in Amsterdam. Sees a 747. Beneath it, 2 objects are falling away.
At first I thought they were parachutes, and just as they were above the treetops, I realized that they might be airplane engines.
It's a startling revelation. Air crash investigator Franz Earhart immediately orders a team of divers to search Gooimeer Lake. Recovering the engines could solve the mystery. It's now clear to investigators that the 2 right-hand engines didn't simply fail.
Number 3 and number 4 engine inoperative.
They sheared off completely. Unable to see the engines from the cockpit, the crew had no idea what had happened. Now there's a new mystery facing the team. What could rip 2 5-ton engines off a 747 simultaneously? The case for a terrorist ground-to-air missile or bomb now looks compelling. To prove this theory, investigators must recover the engines from the bottom of Gooimeer Lake and examine them for clues. Against all the odds, after just a few hours of searching, a diver gets a lucky break. He spots a massive chunk of aircraft debris. The team quickly identifies it as the outer engine from the 747's right wing. And there's another key find on land near the lake. Pieces from a 10-meter stretch of the same wing's leading edge. It's the team's first chance to find out why the engines fell off. They rush the wreckage to their labs. Scientists swab the engine and the chunks of wing for traces of the chemicals used in explosives. They examine the metal surfaces for the telltale micro-pitting caused by blast fragments. It takes 2 days. The analysis draws a complete blank. Investigators can find no evidence of an explosion, nor any other clue to why the engine broke away. It's a dead end. Now the investigators' only chance to solve the mystery is to find the 747's inner engine, in the hope that it holds the key, or to locate one of the plane's black box flight recorders at the crash site. The Dutch Navy joins the search for the inner engine. It deploys 2 specialized salvage vessels, sonar, and more divers. But after 2 more days, they find nothing. The investigators are worried. With every passing hour, crucial evidence is slipping away.
The water would start corroding the parts, and because of that, we were keen to find it as soon as possible.
The news is equally bleak at the crash site. Search teams can find no trace of either of the 747's critical black boxes. To make things worse, there's another setback. Within 24 hours of the crash, the mayor of Amsterdam ordered diggers and bulldozers to clear the site. He's under huge public pressure to recover bodies as quickly as possible. Earhart and his team are powerless. Their only option is to follow the debris to its new home, an Amsterdam garbage dump. It seems a hopeless task. Then, after 3 days, Earhart is in his Amsterdam office when he gets a call. It's good news. One of his team has found the 747's flight data recorder.
We were very happy. At last we could take a step forward in our investigation.
This black box records all the aircraft's critical technical data. It could prove the breakthrough they so desperately need. But when they open it, it's a terrible letdown. The tape inside is broken in 4 places. And data from the plane's critical final 2.5 minutes is indecipherable. They send the recorder to specialists in Washington, D.C. and the USA. It's a long shot, but it's their only hope. 11 days after the crash, the investigation team is at rock bottom. But just as investigators are beginning to despair, they hit the jackpot. A diver finds the inner engine, half buried by mud. It's still attached to the mounting that fixed it to the wing. Earhart and the team are excited but cautious. What if this engine proves as unenlightening as the first? It's battered and dented, but they can see no obvious evidence that it was hit by a missile. And when they run the battery of tests for explosives on this engine, once again, they find nothing. Investigators reach a turning point. They rule out a terrorist attack as the cause of the disaster. In fact, they can find nothing wrong with the engine itself. But when they examine its cowling, the outer casing, they quickly spot something odd. A dent, and on it, smears of black paint. Where did it come from? They send the paint for analysis. But they must still find out why the inner engine broke away in the first place. Since the engine was still fixed to its mounting, the separation must have occurred at the point where it was fixed to the wing. The team studies the 747's engine attachment system. 4 fittings hold the engines to the wing. At the heart of each is a 14 centimeter long hollow steel bolt called a fuse pin. The fuse pins are strong enough to take the load of a 5-ton jet engine at full thrust. But in some circumstances, they're actually designed to fail. If an engine suffers a crisis, like a mechanical seizure or a bird strike, it can vibrate violently. If the vibrations get too severe, the engine might tear itself free, destroying the wing with dire consequences. To prevent this, investigators know that all 747s have a damage limitation system. When vibrations reach a critical point, the fuse pins are engineered to snap, allowing the engine to fall away harmlessly. But there's no sign that the inner engine suffered a crisis. So the team must consider a chilling possibility. Did something go terribly wrong with the fuse pin system that led to catastrophe? The team examines the mounting that fixed the inner engine to the wing. They focus on what's left of the 2 central fittings which carry the bulk of the load. The fuse pins they held are both missing. But on one fitting, investigators spot something intriguing. The top of the lug that held the fuse pin has snapped off. Did this happen when the engine hit the lake, or earlier? Metallurgists examine the brake and make a dramatic discovery. The stress markings are not typical of a violent impact. They reveal that the lug snapped because it was overloaded. They realize this can only have happened if the fuse pin inside broke at one end. This would transfer significant stresses and twisting forces onto the lug at the other end, making it give way. Fuse pins are designed to break at both ends if the strain on the engine reaches a critical point. Earhart believes that a partial failure can only mean one thing: metal fatigue in the fuse pin. It's a startling new theory. Could metal fatigue in the engine's fuse pins be at the root of the disaster? But Earhart knows the inner engine would only shear off if both central fuse pins failed. To prove their theory, investigators will have to find the missing fuse pin from the other central fitting. The chances of finding such a tiny part in Gooimeer Lake are remote. Earhart's only hope that a significant fragment was still attached to the wing when the jumbo crashed. He deploys more than 20 workers to search the garbage dump where crash debris now lies. No one holds out much hope. The missing fuse pin was only 14 centimeters long and may have shattered on impact.
Looking for the essential parts of the wing mounting was like looking for a needle in a haystack.
"48 hours into the search, they have still found nothing. Then, on day 3, one of the team spots a piece of metal half hidden by garbage. It's part of the missing central fitting from the inner engine. And against all the odds, there's a chunk of fuse pin still inside. Investigators know it may be their last chance to solve the mystery behind the disaster. They begin scanning the fragment under an electron microscope as soon as it arrives from the rubbish dump. And they find their answer. In the wall of the fuse pin, there's a crack 4 millimeters deep. The patterns around the fault show all the classic signs of metal fatigue. The flaw started along machining grooves in the hollow pin's central bore. It's the breakthrough the team have worked so hard to reach. They already know that metal fatigue made one of the inner engine's two critical central fuse pins fail. Now, they have indisputable evidence that the other central fuse pin was also defective. With every flight, the microscopic cracks in the inner engine's fuse pins got bigger and bigger. On October 4th, 1992, they reached a critical point. At 6,500 feet, with the engine at full thrust, the faulty fuse pins fail. But the investigation team still has to explain why the 747's outer engine came off as well. It's almost inconceivable that two sets of fuse pins could fail at the same time. Then they received the test results on paint smears found on the inner engine's cowling. The smears are an exact match for the paint used on the central fan blade spinner of the outer engine. They realize there's only one possible explanation. The inner engine was at full thrust as the plane climbs. So when it shears off, it doesn't fall harmlessly away, it shoots forward. A split second later, it falls back, and by sheer chance, strikes the outer engine, smashing it off the wing. The impact also rips away a 10-meter stretch of the wing's leading edge. Investigators now know that a freak accident caused two engines to fall off Flight 1862.
Mayday, mayday.
They alert the manufacturer, Boeing. It immediately instructs airlines operating the 1,000 747s around the world to inspect all fuse pins and replace any that are faulty. But the traumatized residents of the Belmer are desperate for the answer to another major mystery. Why the plane crashed? A 747 should be perfectly capable of flying on two engines. So what made Flight 1862 suddenly nosedive just minutes from an emergency landing at Schiphol Airport?
Raise the flag! Get the gear down!
Investigators study the section of wing recovered from Gooimeer Lake. It's clear this damage would have reduced the plane's lift. They also realize that key flight controls lost hydraulic power when the engines broke away. But if this damage was severe enough to down the plane, how did Captain Fuchs keep it flying steadily for another 8 minutes? It's a paradox. Then, 18 days after the crash, the team gets some good news. Experts in the USA have retrieved the information from the damaged flight data recorder. The technical readings it contains prove to be the final piece of the puzzle. They reveal in chilling detail what finally downed Flight 1862. Investigators know that metal fatigue caused one engine to shear off LL 1862 and smash off a second engine. The incident also destroyed a section of the right wing's leading edge and disabled key controls.
Mayday, mayday, we have an emergency.
But the damage was clearly not severe enough to down the plane immediately. Why did it suddenly spiral out of control a full 8 minutes after the Mayday call? The team drafts in test pilot and aeronautical engineer Geert Tikelaar to find the answer. He analyzes thousands of technical readings from the 747's flight data recorder. After 8 months of hard work, Tikela has a dramatic new insight into what happened to Flight 1862. For the first time, he's able to explain the complex relationship between the loss of the engines, the mangled wing, and the damaged controls. He discovers that although the crippled plane could still fly, a crash was inevitable as soon as it tried to land.
De crew had geen keuze.
The crew didn't have a choice. They could do nothing else. They were doomed to crash.
The flight data analysis finally reveals why LL-1862 nosedived without warning after pilots kept the jet airborne for a full 8 minutes. And how hundreds of people on the ground were left seconds from disaster. 8 minutes to disaster. Defective fuse pins holding the inner engine to the wing snap, causing the plane to lose not one, but 2 engines. This catastrophe also damages a 10-meter stretch of the wing's leading edge, causing a major disruption of airflow over it. This reduces lift on the right-hand side and makes the 747 roll to the right. Captain Fuchs has also lost 2 hydraulic systems, controlling key anti-roll devices. He only manages to wrestle the jumbo back to level flight by pushing his remaining controls to the limit. The flight data analysis reveals that his current airspeed of 280 knots is the key. It's just high enough to get sufficient lift out of the right wing to keep them aloft. 39 seconds to go. 5 kilometers from the Belmer apartment complex. Now Captain Fuchs lifts the jumbo's nose to slow the plane down for landing, unaware that this routine procedure will have fatal consequences. The flight data reveals that this change in angle worsens the disruption in airflow over the mangled right wing. The result is a further loss of lift on this side of the plane, and it starts to roll again. Captain Fuchs struggles to pull it level, but his airspeed has now dropped below 260 knots, reducing lift even more. This time, his damaged controls cannot save him.
Controlling problem.
30 seconds to disaster. As the roll and loss of lift reach a critical point, the 338-ton jumbo plummets earthward.
Get the gear down. 1862 going down.
LL-1862 nosedives from 2,500 feet. Microscopic faults in 2 14-centimeter-long components lead to the death of 43 people. Rescue workers found the bodies of 16-year-old Guillermo and 14-year-old Graciela the morning after the crash, just meters from where their home once stood. Medical experts believe they were killed instantly. After the disaster, the children's parents, Marlena and Stanley, moved to another part of Amsterdam. They couldn't bear to live in the area where their children died.
Het is niet makkelijk, dat geef ik ook toe.
It's not easy to lose your child or your children.
Maar je kan...
But you can get strength from the good times you've had with them.
De fijne momenten wat jij met ze hebt gehad. En de herinneringen...
Memories from their birth to their death. No one can take away from me.
Dat neemt niemand me af. En ik weet dat ze hier zijn. Ik voel gewoon...
I know they are here. I feel their presence. A good atmosphere.
The apartments in the crash zone were demolished, but their foundations remain. Nearby is a permanent memorial to the victims. But the disaster also leaves another legacy. Boeing goes on to strengthen all 747 engine-to-wing attachments, including fuse pins. It also rolls out a more stringent inspection regime with new ultrasound testing to detect metal fatigue. The changes brought about by the Schiphol crash make every 747 flying today a safer aircraft.